All right, Grant, I got your math module program. Let's take a look at it together. Okay, here's your template you turned in. We're going to create a word problem. You calculate the volume and surface area of a cube, sphere, cylinder, or cone. Print the word problem. Ask the user to enter the information necessary. If you have pi in your calculations, just use 3.14. Print the results of the calculations and write the pseudocode. So pseudocode, this program calculates the surface area of a Coke can. Okay, so you're doing a cylinder. So there's your volume and your surface area. Input the radius. Okay, well, input would be the user. The user is supposed to enter that. You're supposed to ask them, what is the radius of your can? Right, and what is the height of your can? So the user would enter 3 or 12 or whatever size Coke can that they're calculating, because that's the user to input. Calculate surface area using the formula volume equals. Wait a minute. No, that calculates the volume, because the volume is pi times radius squared times height. That's that one. This one is the surface area. You got to calculate both. So one is the volume and one is the surface area. And then you output the calculated solid area. Okay, so a little issues. We'll see what happens in your program. To code, use Python idle with comments. Type a heading that has your name, date, and description. I don't see anything that has your name on it. Make sure you indent the program properly and use meaningful names. So let's get a copy of your program here. Copy. Let's paste it into a Python window. And let's run. Error on line 1. Did you debug this before you turned it in? Because first thing I get is an error, because that is not the way our lesson said to do that. Import math is not the correct way to do that. It's from math import asterisk, saying bringing in all the math commands. So let's put an asterisk. Let's put a hashtag on that line just so it ignores it. Now let's try running it. Oh, line 2. It doesn't like, because I put import instead of import. I am misspelling. Now as line 4 has got an error. So you're setting up a function to calculate the cylinder. We haven't learned about doing any other functions. We're supposed to just define main, but you can't capitalize. There's define main down here. You can't capitalize the D, that creates an error. Oh, now is line 5, because I don't know what this is, but it's nothing that Python recognizes. Let's just get rid of that, because that's not a line of code. It just creates an error. Every line has an error as soon as I fix one. Surface area, well, you can't put a space in a variable name. So this would be the name. Still got a bad input, because 2 times 3.14 times radius plus height. Okay, well, I think the problem is right now it doesn't know what any of those are. It doesn't know what radius are and height are. Volume is radius. What is this? Times? That's not how you square the radius. That was in our lesson. If you look in our lesson, it told you how to use the power function to raise something to a second power, and then return surface area volume, because you're using this function. So here's your main part. I don't know what all these spaces are in here. Define main. Print this program, calculate the surface area and volume of Coke can, and instead of an input statement, you just entered it. Radius is 3 and height is 12. Now here's the reason why it has no idea what you're talking about up here, because you capitalize these. These are entirely different variables. That is not the same as radius and height with small letters. Still has errors on line 6. Okay, so you didn't have any input statements. The user is supposed to input, what is the radius of your can? What is the height of your can? And you can say in centimeters. Perform calculations. If this is still part of your main function, which it is, it has to be spaced over too. And this is a capital P, so that's not going to work either. And I don't know if it did work. This is kind of crazy. Let me see. I don't know if I can get any of this to work. Because you're playing with a whole different function here. It looks like this was written by AI, or you found something on the internet and you're trying to duplicate it, but you're you're creating a lot of errors with it. Yeah. Because you're capitalizing things that you're not capitalizing later, so it's treating them like different things. I'm not sure I can get any of this to work. Oh, well, you probably have to space this over because it's part of that function. See if that makes, yeah, now the line 18 is where we get an error. Surface, oh, again, you can't put a space in there because that makes it two different things. This is one thing. If you put a space, it's two things. Return outside function. Lots of issues in here, but if we got rid of a lot of this, let's say we don't even go calculate the surface area. Let's just see if we can make it run at all. Yeah, return outside function. I don't know. Is that supposed to be? Okay, there we go. Let's see if this actually does anything. Okay, the program calculates surface area environment of CodeCam. The surface area of the cylinder is surface area .2f, :.2f. I think that is the surface area, right? No, it's not the surface area. And there's the volume is volume : .2f cubic centimeter. So this was not written in Python idle. That's why I'm thinking like ChatGPT wrote this. Because we have a different version of Python. There's multiple versions of all kinds of software out there. We have a different version of Python. That's why you have to write it in Python idle, because ours works a little differently. Some of the things that work in other people's Python don't work in our Python. And some of the things that work in our Python don't work in their Python. It's just because there's different versions of the same software. So my best advice is to go through the lessons, look at the sample programs that are in the lessons. How do we write that load? How do we do a power? How do we do a square root? We didn't need a square root for this one, but how do you need what are the things you have to have in your program? And write your program. Don't go looking for internet to do it. Oh, let me look at your questions. To find the surface area of a cylinder, be useful in food packaging. It's hard to come up with terms at first. As warmed my brain understood a lot better, and the ability of the user to edit the program line for different outputs. Yeah, but it didn't work. I had error at every line I would fix. The next one have an error. Then the next one have an error. So, you need to try to debug these things and don't turn them in full of errors. And if you have an error you can't find, you can copy the program, paste it in an email and say, Mr. Brock, I got an error on line 11. I can't figure out what it is. I can help you, that kind of stuff. But you got to go look at the lessons and figure out exactly the way the program works, and don't let ChatGPT or DeepAI or anyone else try to write that for you, because some of this has some of that looks to it, that you were getting that to write your program or parts of your program. So I'll give you what points I can, but I like to make these video feedback just so you can understand exactly what I'm seeing and can make you a better programmer going forward. So I'll get this to you. See you in class.